You're listening to episode number 11 of the Play Your Position podcast.
Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count. Here's your host, Mary Lou Kaser. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I am very excited to introduce my guest today, Gloria Nussbaum. Gloria, are you ready for kickoff?
I am.
Awesome. Gloria first learned about personal historians in 2001. That same year, she began her business, Reel to Reel, and since then has recorded personal stories with more than 90 individuals throughout the United States. Her engaging personality, life, and work experience and attention to detail make her ideally suited to work with all kinds of people to preserve their stories. Her passion for capturing the actual voice of the storyteller makes her unique among her colleagues in the Association of Personal Historians. She has a wonderful tagline, "Stories add leaves and flowers to the branches of your family tree," and is just an all-around wonderful person. So, Gloria, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you today. And before we get started into the real depth of what you do with storytelling, why don't you describe for listeners how you got into being a personal historian? What led you to play that position?
First off, Mary Lou, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to your listeners. And yes, I, from a very early age, have had a passion for radio. The first thing I bought myself was a transistor radio, so that already dates me, but that's okay. And then later with tape recorders. I worked in radio broadcasting in Phoenix, Arizona for about 9 years and loved being on the air, loved that aspect of it. So not only was it listening to radio that I loved, but being on the radio was also something that I discovered I really had a passion for. Well, life happened and I got into other businesses. We moved around the country. And in 1998, my husband and I moved here to Beaverton, Oregon, to be closer to our daughter and grandchildren. And for several years, I'd sort of had an uneasy feeling, sort of, I guess, my midlife crisis, like, I want to do something, and I think it involves tape recorders. And long story short, in January of 2001, I was at the gym one evening after work, feeling very depressed and like I can't go back to this job too much longer. Grabbed an old magazine, and I think it was a Good Housekeeping, and got on the stationary bike and started pedaling. And as I flipped through that magazine, I discovered a half-page article, and the first sentence was, "She takes her tape recorder, goes to your home, and records your life stories." And at the end of that, it mentioned something called the Association of Personal Historians. I ripped the page out of the magazine, even though I'm not really known for stealing. Came back to my home that evening and said to my husband, "I think I found it. I think I know what I am. I'm a personal historian." I had never heard of that before. I immediately joined the association, started my business on September 1, 2001, and as they say, the rest is history.
I love that story for a number of reasons. First of all, I love the way you described ripping the page out of the magazine. That right there is so powerful because it really evokes that sense of that passion that you knew at some core level this was special and it was going to lead you somewhere. Even though that vision wasn't entirely clear at that point, you could tell there was something there. And then the other thing I love is that you came to what you do now later in life, but it was grounded in a position that you had found at a young age, which started with the tape recorder. And so that thread has been with you. And it wasn't until the magazine page triggered something deep in you that you realized there is something for me. And there it was. So thank you so much for sharing that story. Has there been somebody, Gloria, that has become an instrumental coach or mentor for you as you've really built out your personal historian business? Somebody that's either guided the way or that you've looked to for advice?
Well, the first person that comes to mind is actually the woman who was in that magazine article. Her name is Letice Stewart, and at the time she lived in Texas. And as fate would have it, I was actually able to connect with her. And I had joined the Association of Personal Historians, which I'm now going to call the APH. Had gone to a local event that was sponsored by some folks here in the Portland area who are members. They were less than enthusiastic about my idea because I said that I planned to do this work in audio format, and they said, oh, who's going to possibly want that? They were very much into books and video, which, as you noted in my intro, the majority of personal historians work in books and some in video and a few of us in audio. So all of that to say, I was a bit discouraged when I came home from that workshop on a Saturday evening. The next Monday, I had already scheduled a phone call with Letice in Texas, and I told her at that time that I was a little discouraged, that I had this idea of how I wanted to do this work, but I had been told that maybe it wasn't going to work. And she said, oh, Gloria, don't ever let anyone tell you you can't do something. If that's what you've decided to do, then just go for it and just figure out a price that works, figure out how you want to do it, and don't look back. And I never have. That was just perfect timing in terms of sort of the final little push that I needed that was going to say to me, it's okay, you can do this. And it was actually even before I started my business that I had that phone call. And the other thing I would simply say is that I can't speak highly enough of the Association of Personal Historians. It's basically a trade organization, and the vast majority of us run our own businesses because what we do is so unique and how we do it is so unique that you really need a group of people. I call it finding my tribe. We call it finding our tribe, I should say, because suddenly you discover that there are all these people out there who have the same passion that you do, and that there are enough stories to go around that we don't need to be seeing people as our competitors, that actually if we all work at this together, we can share information, we can find ways to make, to all do what we love to do and do it in the way that works best for us.
Absolutely. And that plays right into my motto of this program, which is play your position. You designate yourself among this tribe of other personal historians because of your passion and belief in audio. You will be able to meet the needs of families or couples or individuals in that realm, whereas somebody who's also recording stories who may be passionate about video can do that for the people that want the video. So I love that you brought that up, Gloria, because it is something that I am so passionate about, which is figure out what your position is, stick to it, and believe that there is a place and plenty of business or opportunity for you. And the other thing that you shared that also resonates with me, and I think a lot of my listeners, is that you do need to find a tribe. I call it a team. A lot of people call it a tribe, but you need to find that group that has the same mission or something in common with you, and you work together to advance whatever it is that you are passionate about. It can be through a trade organization. It can be through an association. It can be just a group that meets up for coffee once a month to discuss how are things going and what can we help each other with. So again, thank you for bringing that up. In line with the whole audio piece, you were ahead of your time because obviously podcasting has become a very hot method of delivering stories and information to an audience that seeks that kind of experience. And so I'd love for you to discuss from your vantage point, what are some of the big changes that you've seen either as a personal historian or just as a citizen that have either challenged you or helped advance your cause? And if you met with some challenges, Gloria, how did you overcome those to keep the ball moving down the field towards the end zone?
What I'd like to do is I've actually sketched out here what I call realizations that I came up with as I was starting and running my business. Things that I think might possibly be helpful for others. Here we go. So I'm going to give you 7 realizations. And let me just quickly say that some of these, this didn't happen instantly. Some of these took some years to figure out. So don't give up. So first of all, as you noted, I knew instantly that I wanted to work in audio and only in audio. And as I said, I had colleagues who were skeptical that that would be possible. But I decided to work in audio for a couple of reasons. One was that was what I loved and believed in. And the other is that that's what I know how to do. I know how to record. I know how to interview. I know how to edit audio. I know how to produce the final product, which at this point are CDs. So I went with what I knew. So the first realization was just do what you know how to do. The second one was that I made a realization early on. I went to a networking meeting, and this was a networking meeting of marketing professionals for retirement communities. And they talked a lot about marketing, and for the first few meetings, I kept thinking to myself, why do I keep coming back here? Why am I here? And then, one day the light dawned, Gloria, you are the marketing person for reel-to-reel recording personal stories. So that meant that it made sense for me to be there. Because I'm a sole proprietor, the business is Gloria. Gloria is the business, at least when I'm working. And so it was important for me to realize that I was wearing a lot of hats and that I was going to have to figure out how to wear those hats, which leads perfectly into my next realization, which was that I am not an entrepreneur. Now, as I look at the actual definition of what an entrepreneur is, that's not me. I'm a person who had a passion and figured out that nobody else was doing what I wanted to do. At least they certainly weren't doing it the way I wanted to do it. And so the only option I had was that I had to start my own business because it was the only way that I could do what I love to do, what I discovered that I needed to do, and that could be helpful, hopefully, to the people with whom I'm working. So for me, that was a really aha moment because it kind of in a way freed me up, because I see entrepreneurs as people who just want to run their own business. Like, what that business isn't nearly as important as actually just running a business. And that didn't describe me at all. So that was how I came to the realization that I'm a sole proprietor businesswoman, not an entrepreneur. The fourth realization is that I realized that I never wanted employees. That if I needed some things done that I didn't know how to do, then I would contract those out. And again, that's where the association came in so handy, is that I have colleagues both locally here in the Portland and the Oregon area and in southern Washington who can do a lot of the things that maybe I don't want to or can't do. And so by deciding that I never wanted employees, that made running the business much more simple. It streamlined it. I don't have to worry about insurance for other people. I don't have to worry about making sure I have enough work so that because someone else is counting on me. I didn't want any of those headaches. I wanted to record stories, and that's what I do. So that was another key thing that I discovered. And this did not come as a big surprise, but I love being in charge. And most people who meet me, of course, if you first meet me, you think, as I've described myself, as this little old lady. And then I have a friend who says, but they don't have a clue, Gloria. They just don't have a clue. Because if people get to know you, they know that you have strong opinions and that you love being in charge. In my business, being in charge means that I'm responsible only to my clients and to the people with whom I'm working directly.
Yes.
If I decide that I want to do things this way, then I get to do it that way because I'm in charge. No one can say to me, that's wrong. They can suggest other ways, and I am free then, of course, to choose whether or not to take that advice. And hopefully I'm wise enough to know when I should and when it's okay not to. But that was really an important thing as well, is that I'm the boss, and I make no bones about it. I do it this way. If you want other things, then I've got colleagues. For example, I often say, let's get the stories recorded. If you decide at that point then that you want a book, then I will be more than happy to tell you who the best transcriptionist in the world is. She's right here in Portland. I've got colleagues who will be happy to do books of any kind, style, with photos and documents and all of that. But what I do is I record the stories, and I'm more than happy to finish it up and give you an audiobook, which, of course, in my humble opinion, is the best thing ever, because just to quote David Isay, who is the founder of StoryCorps, whom many of your listeners have probably heard of, he says, I believe the soul is contained in the voice. And that sums up what I believe so beautifully that I've got that on the homepage of my website. Quickly, another realization that I had was that I figured out how to do personal history in audio format from scratch. I didn't have anybody else who was doing it this way, and so I had to figure it out. And I did. I figured out everything from how to conduct the interview, namely keeping your mouth shut, listening, asking questions, and then really listening, and being able to guide people, figuring out how I was going to package all of this and put it all together. I figured it all out, and then, years later, I decided that I was done giving away that information. So now I am more than happy to consult with people who are interested in learning how to do this work, but I no longer just give it away because I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into figuring this out. So again, I think that's a piece of being a smart businesswoman, is that you figure out at some point what you are going to give away and what you aren't. And that's an important line. And finally, I learned probably not too far into my business, I figured out who my target market is. And it's not who people think it is at first blush, because the minute you tell people what you do, the first thing they say is, oh, you can go into all the retirement communities and give talks, and those are the people. Okay, hold everything. Yes, those are often the people with whom I'm working, older adults, although I like to make it clear that we have stories from day one, and often we wait too long. But that's a whole nother topic. Those folks in the retirement community are not my target market. They have 1,000 excuses for why they can't or shouldn't do this. My target market is women in their probably 40s, and they still have parents who are living, and they also have children. So they are at an age when they start to realize that there's this thing called mortality, that both their parents and they are not going to live forever. And so maybe it's time to get mom and dad stories for my kids. So what I call playing the grandkid card. Once I discovered that that's who my target market was, then the challenge was figuring out where those people hang out. I think it's really important to figure out who am I going after? Where should I be spending my energy and my time?
Absolutely. Every small business owner, whether you're a sole proprietor or you have some employees, has to face that. And Gloria, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how much amazing wisdom that you just shared. You basically just walk through the process anybody who's considering starting a business really needs to go through. Everything from considering, do I want to run a business or do I want to do what I'm passionate about? And you were absolutely clear 100% with yourself. You knew what position you were playing, and that was it. And you were going to fill in with other people to build that team, but you weren't going to go out and recruit and then be responsible for managing those people. It was really on an as-needed basis. And I think that distinction is so critically important because, as you know, I've had my own business now for 10 years, and I've gone through that roller coaster that a lot of people do. You first start out thinking, oh, I love to do X or I love to do Y, and therefore I'll create a business around it. And then pretty quickly discover that there's a lot more to building a business than just doing what it is you love. There's a lot of skills that need to be learned, and you do have to come to that realization that you did, which is, am I going to actually build a company and hire people to do the marketing, the sales, the promotion, the back end, the social media, and on and on and on? Or am I just going to focus on delivering this amazing service or perhaps product into the marketplace, and that's all I'm going to do? So again, thank you so much for sharing that, along with all the other tips. And for people who are listening today, everything that Gloria is sharing can be found on her page at maryloukaser.com/Gloria. I want to say you've scored a touchdown, but I think it's time you need to score another one, Gloria. So let's do that. Let's have you take the ball into the end zone one more time and score another touchdown.
I'd be happy to do that. So I have 3 points here that I'd like to share. First of all, as I've said before, figure out what sets you apart, what makes you unique. Now, we've mentioned several times that among personal historians, I have a niche which is audio, because there are so few of us in the association who do that. Just to give an example, I think we're around 600 or so members worldwide, and there are probably maybe 10 to 12 of us who actually focus pretty solely on audio. So that makes me very, very unique. Now, I realize that depending on what kind of a business you are in or you want to start, that it can be a little bit harder to find what sets you apart, what makes you unique. But once you figure that out, that's something you can kind of take to the bank, basically. Secondly, find people to help or at least to consult with. And again, we've talked about that. For me, it's often the Association of Personal Historians. The other thing is that I'm an extrovert, and much of what I do involves sitting here in my office in front of my computer and watching audio files go by on my computer screen and listening and editing. That's what takes the majority of the time. The interviews are what are my passion, and then, of course, there's, as you said, behind the scenes work. Finding people to spend time with. So I go to networking meetings, which I find really helpful. And then just connect with people and go out and have a cup of coffee, because you meet people like Mary Lou Kayser, for example, and then your world just opens up even farther. So, and I guess as an extrovert, I find that pretty exciting and easy. Although I think introverts can do it too. You just have to work at it a little harder. I do want to give one resource that I love TED Talks, and I think your audience has probably heard of TED Talks. There's one that I actually went back and looked at this morning because it's one that I just think everybody has to go to. The name of it is Want to Help Someone? Shut Up and Listen. And the gentleman who does this is Ernesto Sirioli, Sirolli. And if you just simply Google his name, this will come up as the TED Talk. The thing that he says is no one person has ever started a business. If you look at any model, you'll discover that we can't be everything. So he says the three things you need in business are you need to make it, you need to sell it, and you need to look after the money. And he says no one has ever been born who is good at all three of those. Figure out who is, or find someone who can help you find that person. I cannot recommend this TED Talk highly enough. It is just, if you're starting a business or even if you're in the middle of one, go to this TED Talk and listen to it. It will just blow you away. And finally, don't try to be everything to everyone. As I said before, figure out what your service or product is, what you're good at, what you have a passion for, what you enjoy doing, and go for that. I think that one of the pitfalls or challenges that many people fall into when they're starting a business is that they either want to or think they have to be everything to everyone. And, just this week I heard a program on the radio that there's really a trend right now towards specialization, that people are slowly figuring out that they don't have to be everything, that that's a good thing. And I've even had colleagues get in touch with me and say, I've tried to do books and video and audio, and I'm figuring out I can't do it all. Gloria, help me to figure out how you came to your realization. So just to say, again, figure out what you like, figure out what you're good at, and just go for it, and then find people who can support you.
Definitely. You are singing the praises of my philosophy 100%. And I have heard the same studies. I've been reading about specialization. There's definitely a move towards it. And I think it's coming out of a culture that has created, for a while anyway, this unrealistic expectation that we can do and be everything. And particularly in the small business arena, the entrepreneurial arena, there is that pressure in the early days of wearing the many hats, of having to keep your books and watch your cash flow and go out and make the sale and go out and network and then go and do whatever it is, whether it's make the product or deliver the service. And it's impossible for one person to do it all. I will absolutely make sure I put a link to that TED Talk that Gloria mentioned, because I think that's one everybody could benefit from. Even if you're listening today and you are not a business owner or an entrepreneur, but are working for a large company or some kind of business, the principles that Gloria just shared are the same, because within our roles, within the positions that we play in an organization, that specialty is why we get hired to begin with. When I was teaching, for example, I wasn't hired to also be the vice principal and deal with disciplinary issues. I wasn't hired to serve food in the cafeteria. I was hired to teach English to a set group of students. And that's what I did. Now, that's not to say that we, from our positions, can't pitch in and do other things. You have to do that sometimes. But by being focused, by being specialized, that's when the world opens up. And that, again, is at the core of my philosophy of master one thing and all things become possible. So, Gloria, I'm just going to count that what you just shared is not only another touchdown, but those 3 key offensive strategies straight out of the playbook of Gloria Nussbaum that listeners could implement right away. Take some time and really think about what you're best at, and then who are some of the people in your circle that you could recruit to be on your team. Not necessarily hire, but as advocates for what you're doing. And in turn, you can be that for them. So really, really great. And as we round out the show today, Gloria, what is the best way for people to connect with you? Where is Gloria Nussbaum hanging out online?
First of all, check out my website, which is obviously www.real-to-reel.org. So that's my website. There is a link there to the Association of Personal Historians if you want to learn more about that field. I have some really wonderful little audio clips so you can actually hear some people talking, including my grandson, which is very fun. My phone number is 503-645-0616. And I do want to mention a new and exciting event that is coming up in the next couple of weeks. The Association of Personal Historians has started something called Grown Up Show and Tell. And these are events that are happening all over the country. May is Personal History Awareness Month. And I am thrilled to say that a colleague, Oralee Loveland, and I are putting on the very first Oregon Grown-Up Show and Tell on Saturday, May 17, at the Singer Hill Cafe in Oregon City. It will start at 10 a.m., and the idea is, just to read quickly, remember show and tell from when you were in kindergarten? Well, it's time for grown-up show and tell. Bring a photo, letter, family heirloom, or artifact, and share your story. Or just come and listen. It's like elementary school without the gerbils. So I would like to take credit for that line, but I can't. But it's part of what the association is working at as a way to increase the awareness, first of all, that we all have a story, and secondly, that there are actually people out there who can help you to get that story recorded and preserved in whatever format is best for you, audio, video, books, quilts, whatever. So again, that's taking place on Saturday, May 17 at 10 a.m. at the Singer Hill Cafe in Oregon City. And I would love to see everyone there because I'm excited to see where we can go with this.
That's terrific. A wonderful cause, a wonderful mission. Again, 100% in agreement that we all have a story. Each story matters. Everybody's story matters. So we'll make sure that that promotional piece is also on Gloria's page. And again, you can find that at maryloukayser.com. Click on the podcast tab and you will find not only Gloria's amazing wisdom, but the wisdom of many of the other guests as well. So Gloria, I want to just say what an absolute joy it was to have you as a guest on the Play Your Position podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing your passion for storytelling and your wisdom for being a business person. Fabulous, fabulous content that you put out there. And I look forward to catching up with you live and in person at a future event.
I appreciate the opportunity to share, Mary Lou. Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's guest as much as I did. And remember, you can find the show notes from today's episode over at maryloukayser.com/podcast. I would also so appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to leave me a quick 5-star review on iTunes so more people can find this program and benefit from the wisdom my guests share. I look forward to seeing you on future episodes, and in the meantime, it's a great day to get out there and play your position.
Thanks for listening to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count at maryloukayser.com.